Well, we're here with Father Kazimierz
Chwalek.
Chwalek.
Right.
That's Polish, yes?
That's correct, yes, yes.
So, I mean, I'm very jealous, because since St. John Paul II, I think most of the world wants to be Polish. But tell us how you, born in Poland, have arrived and ended up in Stockbridge. What was that about?
Well, perhaps it's a long story, but I came to the States. It was my parents' wish, as perhaps I should say my father's wish, that I would come here and to study. It would be a high school or middle school. And then when I was staying here, my mother came for my graduation, and then I convinced her that I should stay here. And I went to college, but I promised I would return back to Krakow, which is not too far. My family is about 50 miles away from there. And so I was able to study and to also visit my family. And then subsequently I went to a Catholic University in Lublin. I studied Polish literature, and completing my studies there, I came back to the United States. I actually lived in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was my home base.
Right.
And
you weren't a priest at this time?
No. But I knew the Marians because they had a house in Washington. I was an altar server at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C. Mm. So I knew the Marians and was trying to find, I wasn't too sure which community to join. I felt that I should join a religious community. So I joined the Marians, but before I even became a Marian, I was already involved with the work.
How was that?
Spreading. Because Father Seraphim, who was in charge, and he's truly a patriarch, if you want to call it, for our community, an expert on Divine Mercy. He was a postulator, vice postulator for the cause of St. Faustina. And so he was the one who said, I need your help. When he heard I was studying Polish literature and in graduate school, he says, we have a couple of things to do here on the hill. Mm-hmm. Would you like to help us? So I said yes. And then in the meantime, I joined the community, and I was involved with the proofreading for the first edition, or the original edition, of the St. Faustina's diary. And this is how God forced me to read it, because you know what, I was not interested in this type of things.
It's a big diary.
It is a big diary, yeah. But I had to read it because I had to proofread it. Uh-huh. And when I read it, something happened to me. There's something that just kind of grew. I became aware of God and His love and His mercy, and everything that was there, part of that diary. It is so profound. It had such a profound effect on me. Then I've been involved for the 38 years right now.
And what year was that you were proofreading?
In 1980 during summer, June, July of 1980. And that's when we prepared the original diary, because it wasn't published in Poland, it was prepared here.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
I was given the diary in 1995. I mean, probably a later edition, but I'm sure it was.
No, that was the 87 was when we published the English version. So
as one of the first.
The first, yes.
Editions.
First wave, yes.
Wow, and it's very, very precious to me.
Yeah.
When you mentioned Krakow, and you studied where also?
At both the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, the old academy, which kind of goes back to 1364,
right.
Very ancient. And then subsequently I went to Catholic University in Lublin, and John Paul at that time was still a professor.
You actually...
Yes, I have...
Were taught by him?
Well, I have to say this. You know how the European education system is. You sign up for courses, but you don't have to always go, but you can go to somebody else's courses. Yeah. And so I would, he would come once a month to Lublin, and many of the students would just go and just listen to his lectures. So even though I was not a major, ethics major, but because it was Polish literature, but I still would venture and go. However, his talks were kind of way above my level of understanding, because most of the students were graduate or postgraduate, doctoral students were there.
So he was lecturing in ethics.
Yes.
It is almost impossible to include a lecture in ethics anywhere now.
Yes.
It's almost impossible.
But how important it is, because bioethics, medical ethics,
yes.
The difficulty is right now is that what's possible, they introduce as doable, whether it's ethical or not, whether it's destructive or not.
I remember, because when I was in the European Parliament, and they were drawing up guidelines for the use of stem cells from embryos. And we had to drop the guidelines. And so we had a year of lectures. In the whole year, I think we had possibly 2 lectures on ethics. And all the rest was from scientists who said,
Yes.
give me the boundaries and I'll stay within them. But they weren't being given boundaries because they wanted industry.
Yes.
They wanted to use the unborn child like
Yes. Yes.
well,
See,
you
that's
know.
that's the sad story. And of course, the adult stem cells were the ones who actually are proving themselves to be
absolutely,
successful.
but they couldn't
is,
patent
Yeah.
the adult stem
Yeah.
cells.
Yeah.
So they wanted the poor
aborted,
little
especially
embryo.
aborted children. Yes.
So how amazing that you knew the teaching of this man before he became.
I was, I have to tell you, when I was a student at Catholic University in Lublin, many of the students used to read his books like Love and Responsibility before he became popular as a theology of the body. So
Yes.
it was already then a number of things which were he became quite influential. It subsequently, I have to tell you that one of our community members wrote this calendarium of his life and events before he became Pope. Because, when he became Pope, many of the biographies were kind of really off the wall.
Uh-huh.
And so we prepared it, and it was my responsibility to do it in English. It was the editor of the English edition. It's a huge one, but it's the primary sources of his life, of his activities, and all documents. It was based on documents. And from that book, subsequently, like George Weigel's biography, and they were using that as a basis.
Well, please tell people the name of this.
Well, it's called the Making of the Pope of the Millennium, Calendarium of the Life of Karol Wojtyla.
It's still available?
It can be. I think it's out of print, but if you go into Amazon and take a look, it should still be there. It is a primary source, so it's not like a biography, but it's primary source. So we have copies of his homilies or notes or any type of documentation which was given. Say he was visiting a group of sisters or lawyers, or because he used to give talks and conferences to everybody, medical people, legal professionals, every form, and he was very, very much involved. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you that preparing that book, what I found out is that the Lord prepared him for the whole thing. As he was preparing for the millennium in Poland, he had to do a millennium for the whole church,
right.
For the second millennium, and you could just see how God in His providence prepared him to do the things that he was supposed to do as Pope, leading the church.
As he prepared you for here.
Well, I guess it is true, because I was affected by him, and then I began to read everything he published, from the first encyclical, second Dives Misericordia, and the whole thing, and not only they became easier, but then I felt like I could participate in his very way of thinking, in his way of guiding and being, and it is something that I think that the generation, we have to say that we're part of the JP2 generation.
Yes,
because we were
the son of JP2.
Yeah.
And it's so very tangible to me, this connection between the Marian Fathers, the Divine Mercy, and St. John Paul II.
It is true, but what happened is, because we were promoting Divine Mercy since 1941, as you know. And what happened is, by having Father Seraphim, who was the vice postulator, he was in contact, continuous contact. As a matter of fact, by 1999, when the second miracle was presented to the Holy See, and by the way, both miracles for Faustina were here, or in the United States. They're in the United States. A wonderful Irish girl.
Those Irish get in everywhere,
yes, we know, but this is very true, by the way. So Bob Daigan and Maureen Daigan, she received that miracle. There's a beautiful, by the way, movie about them, which was produced. It's really documentary, great. But so Father Seraphim was the one, Bob Daigan, who was from Boston. He contacted Father Seraphim and says, I would like you to go as a witness to a miracle. He had incredible faith. absolutely wonderful faith. And so he says, I want you to come along. So now his wife was not exactly, she had so many health issues and surgeries that she just basically didn't think God will do anything for her anyhow. It was his faith that led her into the first miracle, which was approved by the Holy See, and then subsequently another priest from Baltimore who received also a miracle. And so John Paul, especially through Jeevish, but also directly with us, he was always asking us to do things. Okay, so we're kind of working side by side. Although, you know, and that includes, by the way, this is kind of quietly known. In 1999, when the second miracle was approved by the Holy See, John Paul asked Cardinal Jeevish to contact us so we could do a survey on behalf of the Church. How many people are interested in celebrating Divine Mercy Sunday on Sunday? I mean, they have the Eucharist, what do you call Mass on the second Sunday of Easter. How many would like to have the feast? And so, can I just tell you, it was such an overwhelming thing. Father Serafin would not allow us to count. He said, this is for the Holy See, but you know what, I've been a math major early in my profession before I switched it. And you know what, by May, although it was no longer needed, because the Holy See already, John Paul proclaimed it based on this survey, which were perhaps several million people who responded. Right. And there was one more box, which Father Seraphin asked me to destroy, and I said, you know how much 500 pages are? Each page, and it was 100 signatures, and you know. Wow. We still had a box, and there were 4 sets of those, and about 18 inches to maybe 20 inches tall. So there's alone, there could have been at least 1 million more signatures. Oh my goodness. These could have been. And so, since the Holy See didn't want it anymore, and I was supposed to burn it, I didn't count it, but my math major brain gives me a little calculation. So even if I were to, you know, to say that, so John Paul used our you know, our work, our promotion, and that's what happened. So thank you for asking this, because we're very happy to work together. Divine Mercy, obviously John Paul, our community, and plus Our Lady.
Well, I feel like we've been led into the back room and the secrets that are so precious, and I just can't thank you enough for sharing this. It's just been very, very special, and God bless you. You're the provincial yes. superior
yes.
of this order in America
in Argentina
and Argentina.
Yes,
and I think I can understand why. So I'm very grateful for your time.
I'm grateful for you, for your ministry, for your work, for your using your talents and abilities to bring forth the message of Christ, to inspire people by your singing, by doing the things that you are doing. God is really using you, and you allowed yourself to be used as this wonderful instrument. So may God be praised through you.
Thank you very, very much, Father Kaz.
Thank you.